Welcome to another episode of Financially Irresponsible. I'm your host, Rahkim Sabree, and I'm super excited to be closing out this season with this very important topic. So recently, I was communicating with a friend about the six-figure earner status. So I remember being a kid, one of my goals was to get a job that paid me a lot of money, as I think most kids in this consumer-driven economy do. And for some reason, the milestone of hitting $100,000 a year or more was like the golden ticket. Like you made it if you made that much money. But some research that I've been doing lately had determined that that may not necessarily be the case. In fact, 51% of individuals earning $100,000 or more are reporting to live paycheck to paycheck. That's right. I'm going to repeat that. Over 51% of people earning $100,000 or more per year are living paycheck to paycheck. And so when I discovered that statistic, it made me kind of scratch my head and wonder, how is it that someone who can command such a high income is living paycheck to paycheck? And this is particularly interesting to me because of my own experience growing up in poverty. When I was a kid, $100,000 easily could have accounted for both of my parents' take-home salary. And my parents were young parents. They had, by the time they were my age, 3 children making less than $100,000 combined, living in New York State, Westchester County to be specific. And so it made me start to think about how I can provide solutions as a financial professional around this phenomenon of paycheck to paycheck. But I think it's important to first define what is a paycheck to paycheck cycle. See, a lot of people consider themselves to be paycheck to paycheck after all of their bills are paid and they are able to do all of the things that they want to do, including invest in retirement, pay into their HSAs or what is referred to as a health savings account, go out, do leisurely activities. There's some viral activity on social media, actually, I believe Twitter and TikTok that suggests or that breaks down what high income earning people like doctors, surgeons are doing with their money. And in one particular piece of content, it demonstrated that the six-figure earner was spending $4,000, I believe, on food, $4,000 on a personal trainer, and $4,000 on actually going out to restaurants and entertaining themselves. And so when you think about the paycheck to paycheck cycle, you don't think about somebody who is spending that much money on entertainment, food, going out. You think about an individual who is struggling to do the bare minimum, who is struggling to put food on the table, who is struggling to make sure that their bills are paid on time, who is struggling with housing. You think of somebody who needs assistance. But the reality for some six-figure earners, and six figures is a broad range, the reality for people who are making closer to $100,000 per year is that many times the cost of living in the state that they reside in is also high. And so in breaking down or defining what a paycheck to paycheck cycle looks like, we have to look at how do we define safety for that individual, and whether or not that individual is able to meet the bare minimum of their expenses, or if they're at the higher end of that spectrum and they're able to meet their expenses but have very little left over after they do so. And in having very little left over, maybe that's $100 or maybe it's $1,000. What are they doing with that surplus when it comes to when it comes to investing, when it comes to saving, when it comes to making financial decisions? Are they one paycheck away from disaster? I want to talk about budgeting for a second because budgeting, and I'll get more into budgeting later on when I start talking about solutions, but budgeting is viewed as this restrictive, almost fad diet like approach to personal finances. Some people have a very emotional reaction to the word budgeting that can be driven by anxiety, that can be driven by shame, that can be driven by guilt. But the reframe on budgeting, or what is affectionately referred to as a spending plan by some financial professionals, is just that. It's a plan that lets you know on paper or electronically what's coming in by way of income and what is going out by way of expenses. When you're able to segregate your income and your expenses in a way that you can look at very quickly and see, this is what I'm spending my money on, this is how I'm prioritizing my spending. Is there room or latitude for me to save, for me to plan for my retirement, for me to invest, for me to put something aside for a rainy day, and on top of that, to enjoy my life? Because we all go out to work so that we can live. We all go out to work so that we can enjoy our money, so that we can provide, so that we can find some kind of fulfillment. And so in establishing a spending plan, the viewpoint should be more so one of, this is what I am able to do as a result of knowing where my money is coming from and where my money is going. And if, in viewing your spending plan, you determine that there are certain areas that you are overspending in, which happens, there's no shame, there should be no guilt associated with that. How can I adjust or recalibrate so that I can get back on track? And we'll talk about goal setting a little bit later in this segment. But going back to the six-figure earner, I decided that I was going to do some polling of some people that I knew who were six-figure earners, who identified with this concept of living paycheck to paycheck, and ask them, what are some of your major expenses associated with having that income? And if you want to guess, some of those major expenses are going to be major expenses across the spectrum of people who earn money. It's going to include housing. It's going to include healthcare. It's going to include transportation. For some individuals, it's going to include childcare. But digging deeper into some of those major expenses, I decided to take a look at what some of those pain points were around the paycheck to paycheck cycle and what keeps people in that cycle, while I try to figure out how to support individuals who are in that cycle get out of it. Some of those major pain points include maintaining their current lifestyle. So of course, when I was a kid, again, going back to me, when I was a kid and I'm like, hey, I want to make $100,000 per year or more by a certain age, and with that $100,000, I'm going to be able to live in this neighborhood. I'm going to be able to drive this car. I'm going to be able to wear these clothes or these accessories. I'm going to be able to not worry about what's in my bank account when I go shopping for food, when I go out to restaurants, when I want to buy the new season clothes, or etc. And so a lot of times when people make more money, their expenses, which are referred to as lifestyle expenses, increase with the increase in their salary. And so people who get accustomed to a certain lifestyle as a result of the money that they make are worried about whether or not they can maintain that lifestyle, or in introducing some of the life changes like becoming partnered, having children, maybe going to school, maybe caring for a sibling or a relative or older adult like a parent or a grandparent. These life events can derail the lifestyle that somebody has created for themselves based off of growing with their income. And so, of course, we hear a lot of financial professionals talk about how you should live on less than what you make. or live within your means or live beneath your means. But how many of us are actually executing on that strategy? If you look at your bank account, going back to the kid version of me, if I looked into my bank account and I was making, theoretically a six-figure salary, and I knew I don't have to worry about budgeting because I always have the money for it. I can buy whatever food I want. I can go out. I can order from Uber Eats or DoorDash, or I can drive the newest, nicest car. I don't have to worry about maintenance because that's going to be covered, et cetera, et cetera. That I'm not planning for that day where maybe I get laid off, or maybe there is a reduction in the workforce and I have to kind of just make a pivot. I'm not planning for when some major event like illness comes in and I have medical expenses that I have to take care of, or the increasing cost of healthcare associated with increased insurance premiums. As a homeowner, I may not be forecasting for, that tree that falls onto the roof because of a storm, and the deductible, that I have to pay in order to get that taken care of, or the water leak that turns into a flood that now results in a complete renovation of a particular area of the home. Or maybe there's just some eyesores on the property, like building a new deck or replacing garage doors, that I have to worry about in the process of my establishing my income. And many times, because credit in this country have become so accessible and a status symbol, we will put these expenses outside of our means on a credit card and just think, oh, I'll pay that back because I have the income to do so. And this thinking is a false sense of security, because we are literally one occurrence away from disaster. Some of the other pain points that individuals who are making six figures or more experience are having money to save, invest, or enjoy. Depending on where you live, the cost of living could be so expensive that while you're able to meet the minimum required expenses for you to cover your bills, cover your housing, cover food, cover healthcare, you're left with very little. And so by the time your next paycheck comes around, you already have exhausted the last one. And in that, there is a concept within budgeting that refers to a budgeting style that is zero-based budgeting. And the whole premise behind zero-based budgeting is that by the time you receive your next check, everything that is allotted for in that budget brings your balance to zero. Ideally, within a zero-based budgeting structure, you are planning for retirement, so you're putting money away for retirement. You are planning for a rainy day, so you're putting money towards an emergency fund. You are planning for healthcare costs, and so you're putting money away for that. But if all of your income is going towards your day-to-day expenses, what you're really doing is you're running on this hamster wheel, and you're hoping that somebody doesn't come in and stop it. Trauma, financial trauma specifically, can impact the way that we approach our spending or our saving. Some people, because of previous financial traumas, have a desire to put away as much money as they can, even if it's in small increments at a time, so that they don't relive that trauma. Some people are worried about homelessness or job loss or being evicted. And so this crippling anxiety of the what if scenario can impact how money is spent or not spent with high income earners just as much as it can impact the way that money is spent or not spent with lower income earners. But in polling this very specific population of high income earners, one of the things that I realized is that there is also this obligation or expectation of friends and family for the individual who is making the high income to support them. This is especially true in first generation college graduates or high income earners who are viewed by family and friends as having made it, but to my previous point, are living in a cycle where their expenses equal their income. Financial decisions that align to their values and goals are also a major pain point for the six-figure earner. And what I mean by that, and I've spent a lot of time in previous episodes talking about helping people to align their values and their goals, is that when we wake up in the morning and we navigate our day, we are bombarded by so many subconscious messages that says, in order to be or feel or seem important or a good person or healthy or successful, that you need to buy this thing. The status symbols or wealth signaling that we participate in through the clothes that we wear, the accessories that we have, the phones that we carry. There's a funny joke on social media that's really not a joke around this battle between who has an iPhone and who has an Android. And supposedly, the people who have iPhones have a little bit more money than the individuals who have Androids. And so there's even like this bias that exists within certain populations of people outside of the high income threshold that says, oh, well, if I have an iPhone and I text you and that bubble doesn't turn blue, then I don't want to talk to you. And so some of the goals that we internalize financially that we set for ourselves are really not goals that we're setting for ourselves. They're goals that society is setting for us, that we are adopting and saying, this is something that I want to accomplish for me because, and then we fill in that blank. That because can look like status. That because can look like power. That because can look like a wealth signal that says, I am a part of a group of people who do this thing. And because I'm a part of a group of people who do this thing or who have access to this thing or who view life through this lens, it makes me more important than you. And if I'm more important than you, then I feel important. And so when we look at the other side of this equation, the value side, and we start to determine, or we help individuals determine how they can do an audit of the values that they have internalized, whether those values come from family, come from culture, come from religious beliefs, come from social groups. Sometimes the values that we have can either get in the way of the goals that we establish for ourselves financially, or can create a sort of cognitive dissonance between what it is that we feel like we should be doing and what it is that we truly desire. And I find this to be particularly true of individuals who are making $100,000 or more because of the expectation of members of their community, whether that community consists of family, friends, co-workers, the internalized expectations of society at large, or just culturally. Some communities are very communal, and in that, there is an expectation that if you have more, you have the ability to give more. If you have more, you have the ability to do more. And depending on where you fall on the side of the value goal spectrum, you may feel obligated to give more, even though you don't necessarily want to, or even though you are not necessarily in a position to do so. And so the last pain point that I want to address on for six-figure earners is learning how to establish financial boundaries. And establishing financial boundaries is not just as simple as saying no or I don't have it. Establishing financial boundaries looks like the lecture that we all get when we get on the airplane that says, when these masks drop from above, make sure that your mask is securely fastened before you try to help somebody else. And many times what happens in instances based off of the values and the goals that somebody might have, or the clash between those values and those goals, is that the individual is helping somebody else secure their mask before they secure their own mask, because that individual is being perceived as helpless or not being able to do for themselves. And so a lot of the high income earners will sacrifice laying down a strong financial foundation before they can go and help other people. And we see this in popular culture, right? We see this with athletes. We see this with entertainers. We see this with people who randomly win the lottery. Many times their wealth is given away because they're trying to bring everybody with them instead of taking the precautions to lay down the foundation of what it is that they need to do financially. And so as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about what are the ways that I can help this particular population, you might be wondering, well, why does he want to help this particular population anyway? It's because this population is often neglected because they don't appear to need the help. And so some of those solutions in providing help for this population looks like very foundational budgeting. And so, I talked about budgeting a little bit earlier in this session, but breaking down the different ways that somebody can budget and the different budgeting styles. One of my favorite budgeting styles includes paying yourself first. And that means after taxes are taken out, you get paid before you pay any bills. I made reference to the zero-based budgeting structure. There's also a 50-30-20 rule that accounts for your major expenses, your wants, and your needs. Helping people understand budgeting and choose a budgeting system that works for them helps them to, again, understand where their money is coming from and where their money is going. Understanding how to establish and set boundaries is the next possible solution. So many times people feel shame because they don't have the language, or they don't feel comfortable saying, no, I need to make sure that I'm straight first before I can help you out. And so being able to provide solutions around language and reinforcing those boundaries, which I think is arguably more important than setting the boundary, is important. Auditing their goals and their values is another solution. So I talked about the value goal kind of spectrum and the dilemmas that exist there. Determining if the goals that you set for yourself are actually your goals, or if those goals are other people's or society at large. Increasing your income. So many times when we look at budgeting or we look at somebody's income and we say, oh, well, I don't make enough money. The kind of quick response is you need to increase your income. So teaching people how to increase their income, how to monetize skill sets, how to generate an income from those skill sets or those hobbies or those passions can help alleviate some of the stress associated with living in a paycheck to paycheck cycle. Decreasing expenses, addressing financial trauma, and building community are the last three solutions that I want to provide. And I think the best way to provide those solutions is by working with somebody who is a financial professional, who has knowledge and expertise in these areas, who can guide these behaviors and address any of the concerns or the emotional recoil associated with breaking patterns that have been established kind of intuitively. So this has been another episode of Financially Irresponsible. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know if these solutions and pain points resonate. And if they do, how do you feel about taking action on them? We'll save that for the next time, guys. This has been an episode of Financially Irresponsible. I'm your host, Rahkim Sabree, and we'll see you next time.
The Saybrook Fish House in Canton has been serving fresh seafood, chicken, and prime steaks for 40 years. Experience one of our 3 unique dining room settings, 2 with fireplaces, or relax in our cozy pub with a craft beer, wine by the glass, or specialty cocktail while enjoying a meal from our new lighter fare pub menu. Serving lunch and dinner Tuesday through Sunday. Reservations accepted for parties of 2 to 42. Gift cards always available. The Saybrook Fish House, nestled at the crossroads of routes 44, 202, and 179 in Canton.
Follow us on Instagram at nutmeg.tv.